They step into the biggest shows with the biggest names, and sometimes they get written on or off in a moment's notice. It's time to find out all the dramatic details of what it's like to be a guest star. With your host, Pete Ferrero.
Let's go.
Yeah. All right. Hey, so this is exciting. I've got Monica Lacy here, and we're talking about guest star stuff. We're talking about all the things that you did in your career. I mean, so it's, obviously anyone who's watching this knows a lot of the stuff you did when you were younger. You're triplets, and I've interviewed you and your sister on 902 about 90210 a while ago, and we can talk a little bit about 90210. But what was the reason, or how did you know you wanted to be an actor? I wanted to go back there.
To the beginning. My very first job, which was at guest star. It basically, I didn't set out to be an actor. I thought I was going to be like teaching English somewhere, or writing. I thought I'd be a writer. And then we had a friend that did commercials. We lived in Orange County, so used to be they were far apart from LA. It felt very different. And we begged this friend to tell his agent about us, and we met the agent, and then we booked our first audition, which was a commercial. And almost right after that, we booked we met Disney almost immediately. And then we did like one student film, but I started liking it. I just instantly was like, I love this. I liked improving. I liked how I just had never seen anything like it. I didn't grow up in a theater home. I didn't see a lot of theater. I remember loving Annie. That was my first theater that I ever saw.
Yeah, I love that too. Yeah, yeah.
And I would sing it from the top. And I loved the move. I love the drama of it. I like the look inside the person, like in the character, like why they do the things they do. I find that fascinating. And so I think that's what got me interested. And then I just started doing it and liking it. I think the comedy parts of it, I think appealed to me. I love doing comedy. Probably the most. Yeah. I just love to I love learning about humans. I guess it's just a curiosity about human beings.
And so you guys are, you're all young, but you have your sisters to sort of lean on in this process because they're doing the same thing as you. Was that helpful to you when you?
Yes. Oh, well, first of all, how lucky was I that pretty much I wasn't ever alone on the first, all this, it was like I had a sibling or two, with me. And it makes it more fun. It's like being on vacation alone versus with a friend. Sometimes it's better to experience it. And it definitely helped because I could see things like in acting class or even on camera, I'm watching them. And I think we were learning from watching each other, like what works, what doesn't work. And just made it way more fun. And also they were interested in the same things. So we found the same comedy funny. I remember when I was at UCLA with Leanna, kind of around those 90210 days, we would just get a group together and improv, like in somebody's living room. Like people like Chris Hardwick, who's now the Nerdist.
Yeah.
He lived down the hall. He would come hang with us. I think he wanted to be an actor then. And like just different random people that are all making it today. You know what I mean? Like this little crowd. We've all,
Well, there was a group of you, right, that were all sort of acting around the same time and like going to different shows. Who were some of the people that you guys the three of you, were friends with at that time? Were there other actors that, from Growing, I know you did a Growing Pains, we'll talk about that, but like, were there
other was like a little kid crowd.
Right, yeah.
It was the two Corys, Corey Feldman and Corey, wait, I'm blanking on.
Haim.
Thank you, Corey. Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Corky Nemec, we thought Corky Nemec was the coolest. We had done the show, his TV show. And Tracy Gold, I think, was part of that crowd. I remember meeting people at parties. Like there was somebody that did these seltzer parties, there was a restaurant on La Cienega where people sang and they would have parties there all the time. Was it?
Oh, I feel like Brian Austin Green told me about this, where they were like
part of it.
Like some soda party or something like this.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's funny. And he was part of it too. And then and you saw people, like I remember seeing, what's her name? And she plays Felicity. She would be there, or Hilary Swank was kind of in the crowd a little tiny bit around. Maybe we were in acting class together. Everybody just is, you kind of see the same people at the auditions, the classes, and at these little parties. And my parents would drive us. I mean, we were totally dorky. I don't think we had our driver's license. We started with that little crowd, but it was great. It was, I'm super grateful. I remember meeting Heather Graham was the first actress I ever met. And
really, yeah, no, she's so fantastic. Yeah,
she's so fantastic. And I was like, wow, she's a real living, breathing actress. I go, I guess I am too.
right.
You know,
Is it weird because like you're all kids, right? And you're all on these massive shows, sort of, it's developing, it's happening for all of you. Do you see them as like, I don't know, at that age, like kids that you're friends with, or do you see them as like, I don't know, David Silver or the kid that's on Growing Pains or whatever? Like, is it hard for you at that age to like, because they're all super famous at that time, you know, or they're becoming it?
I was just like, I think my head was spinning. I think I was excited, and it was weird. Like one day they were at the party, the next day they were on TV, the next day they're at the party, or there might be like everybody was kind of interchangeable. There was also what was I going to say? There was somebody I just remembered that we hung out with.
Well, like, Lindsay Price had told me that she was at all of these parties as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I know I was going to say Elizabeth Berkley. And so I ran into Elizabeth Berkley the other day, and I'm like, how funny. We're now moms, but we're acting again, but we acted when we were little kids. And so there's nothing like that. Like there's an experience when you're a kid on set, you are still a kid. You're still, even if, and I mean, under 21, you're still, you're not as in charge of yourself. I don't know how to explain it. You still get like kid breaks. They come around. Do you want water? They need to sit down, and they're still taking care of you. And it's just an experience. You're more like an observer too.
Sure.
And then you grow up and realize, oh gosh, I'm in charge of this, and I can, but so there's a shared experience, like a shared, like how, you're kind of dazzled. There's no way nothing's old hat. Mm-hmm. Everything is exciting and fun. And it was weird. I just thought it seemed like everybody was just getting on TV shows left and right. Everybody that I knew was in TV and movies or making it in some way at that time.
And I don't know if you saw Kid 90, that film by Soleil, but did you enjoy that?
Mm-hmm. I'd love to see it. I need to see it.
Oh, you haven't seen it yet, but yeah, it's interesting because it's like really about that time and about that the kids that were doing that. They didn't get into the soda party stuff though.
That's funny that other people remember that. It was, and then there was only like one or two. Everybody did Teen Beat or Tiger Beat. Those were like now I feel like there's tons of, there weren't like publicists everywhere. There wasn't a way to publicize yourself. So your kind of publicity came from your show, or we had Disney kind of helping us or whatever. It was just, and so there was less venues to do in the PR, and they would just show up and you would do a day of shooting at Disney and then they would use those photos, and those would be the ones they used in all the Tiger Beat and all that. Now I think there's more autonomy. Like you as an actor, you have more, you can hire your very own team. I'm sure we could back then, but it just wasn't as diverse, and it wasn't such a machine as it is now.
In the early 80s, there were shows like Different Strokes, and there were really tragic stories that came out of being a kid actor. But this is the 90s we're probably talking about, when the parties were at the soda parties and everybody, would you say there was a different environment, or were people thinking about, we don't want them to turn out like that? Or was it?
Yes, there was a fear, like people would go, oh, because everybody had the negative aspects of it. And they were like, oh, are you gonna, so I think everybody was wanting to be careful and be, I didn't feel that there was, I thought that it felt very clean cut and it was okay. And I felt like everybody had my best intentions and, on down. And I thought that was a good, I think that everybody, I'm sure obviously we now know stuff was going on.
Sure.
Corey Haim. And, but I think if your parents were at all on the scene in some way, shape or form, it was easy to follow the rules and stay safe and be okay.
When you heard about the Coreys and what was going on with them recently, again, what's great about the Punky Brewster movie is that she's looking back at life, and were the memories as good as we kind of remember them, right? That's looking back at them. When you heard about this, what were your thoughts on it? About and obviously you lost them too. You lost in a different Corey Haim in a different way, but it
was not surprising to me. Because there weren't enough people watching. There weren't enough. And as a mother now, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's, I think it was so, it wasn't surprising. It would be very easy to, but because your manager would pick you up and take you somewhere, or you would go meet in Hollywood. I mean, how many times have I done auditions at a hotel, you're going to meet in the hotel room. Like that's now I think there's a lot more awareness of it, but it didn't surprise me. It didn't surprise me at all. It made me sad. And because for everyone that we know about, there's a lot we don't know.
Yeah. And there's probably some that are living with what had happened to them in that time period. So it is sad, but I want to talk about
it. Yeah. And people don't talk, you would never have, I don't even think they had a gay character on TV yet. Like that was before Ellen. Life was so different before nobody talked about, even sexual assault didn't even have a name until Anita Hill, which was what, in the 80s?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
It wasn't, so in these, it was not even a word for that.
Right.
So
and you didn't want to say it on TV, what I mean?
Let alone talk about it or,
Yeah. But it's interesting. So you come in, I think, is it Growing Pains where it all sort of is your...
That's my first job. It was with Leanna, and it was the first time I met actors that were kids like that, except for the one kid, Chris Petit, who we knew from growing up, who introduced us. And we were just enamored. We loved Kirk's family. We kind of got just involved. We loved the friends. We met all of his friends. We just kind of got involved. Like, I don't know. I just think that's kind of our family, maybe because we felt safer because there was, my parents knew Kirk's parents. And so we kind of blended and hung out and I didn't ever feel like, it wasn't like it was organic. You know what I mean? And we liked the sisters,
Candace.
Candace. And then Bridget was the other sister. And we loved the mom. And and I liked meeting friends. I just was really interested. And luckily it was easy to become friends with a lot of these actors. I remember there was a very special drug episode about a friend, and I knew that friend, and I felt very like, we're doing good work here. We're helping. Yeah. And it was everything was a thrill. I don't know. I that was when I went, oh, you could be an actor for real and live and maybe make a living at it. This is great,
And Growing Pains is a huge show. It's one of the big ones that I grew up watching, and I know a lot of kids did because it was a big ABC show. And you guys you did some commercial stuff, and you're just kind of getting into acting, and then you walk on the set of Growing Pains. You know what I mean? Which is like a huge show. What is that experience? I mean, at least you got to do it with your sister, as we were talking about.
Yeah. So I always had a friend, and then there was always other kids in and so it was fun to hang out with other kids. I think it'd be much different if I had to work with all adults, but it was fun because I had my sister, and then we didn't have a clue what we were doing. And it was so thrilling. We're like, you're doing our hair and you're giving us these fun outfits and what? And then the kids were having a great time. And I think I met Evan Arnold. He's like a character actor that's worked forever. And I feel like he was on that show too. So people were and Jordan Brady, a director, I think he came on one of these kids sets, and and these people are all still working. But at the time, I remember I'd never had a bagel. That's a perfect example.
Okay.
Never had a bagel. And it was on the craft service table there. And I'm like, oh, we can eat all this food. It's for us. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, what's that? And they're like, honey, you've never had a bagel? I'm like, nope.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Never had a bagel. And I was like, wow. Okay. So I remember things like they were air kissing. I'd never seen that before. I'm like, is this Hollywood thing? And everybody, the way they talked to the kids were so different. These kids were like adults, mm-hmm. They were commanding attention. Everybody was asking what they thought. They were sitting at the table, literally, figuratively reading out of the script. And I was like, wow, they get so much. And just watching how they collaborated to come up with physical comedy. There was a lot of physical comedy. And I think I learned a lot just from watching Kirk specifically. And then when they bring in the whole, the day before shoot, or they bring in it's like 40 people, they're execs, and they come in and you kind of do like a dry run, like where it's up on its feet, and then you get notes and everybody stands around. I was so shocked. I'm like, who are these people? I'm not, it's different than a movie where it's just, the camera person and your makeup artist, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This was like 40 people all watching, and then they would laugh really hard. I'm like, is that a real laugh? But they do that. That's part of the, to show where to show where the comedy is. And I learned so much about that. Like, it was like a live show. It's the best of a live show. because it's live, you know.
Yeah, obviously the Camerons have shifted a bit, on that show. I mean, do you still stay in touch with them from that, or is
I
it?
wish I could say yes. I think we it was a couple years and then it kind of faded, but I think it's a very warm, friendly relationship. Like I think I even knew Kirk's wife, the woman he married, was an actress too. Like
That's right.
I think we might have even had the same agents. Like that's how intertwined everybody was. And I think, it's interesting. I think I've chatted a little. I think my sisters may have chatted with Candace a little bit. No, it's surprisingly, I guess our paths never really crossed after that.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. I mean, but so you do the Growing Pains. Do you guys watch it together when it comes out, you and your sisters, or what? And how do you handle watching yourself back?
It was so trippy back then. It was, and I also thought it was a one-off. Like to me, I was like, I didn't think I would be an actress today. I thought it was like, how funny we did this one episode of
Growing Pains, right?
Growing Pains. And I remember I had a couple friends come to watch the taping and from high school. And it was like, it was like the biggest thing in our life. I didn't know anybody on TV. I didn't know anybody in the movie business. So this was like crazy. So my friend Laura Shea, and I can't remember who else came to the taping. And then I think that night I had to like race home and cheer at a football game because I was a varsity cheerleader. So I was like this double life. But
yeah, so you were like a real kid, but then you're also like the TV kid. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. And I felt like, it was like this. I was like this real kid, I felt like. And then I'm like, oh, I do this really fun, interesting thing. Look who I got to meet. Isn't this fun? And it's like the number one TV show. It was the only show that we watched. I mean, it was so huge to be on it, to step from the fantasy of watching it every week to be on the set and to see the scripts and go, oh my gosh. And it was so, I'll never forget the feeling of stepping on that set and seeing the familiar family room, the familiar kitchen.
Right.
It's just it's something. And so I'm sure we had our friends over and watched it like on TV and everybody probably screamed. I remember every time we also had done, I think we've just only done a commercial before that for Nissan Stanza GXE. And every time it came on, we all screamed and it was just so weird. I'm like, it was just, because I didn't even have an awareness that it's just so outside of my idea of what I would ever do with my life,
Yeah. So you were a regular kid. You did you go to a
public high school?
Public high school.
High school.
Was it weird, or I don't know, weird is the right word, but did kids come up to you and say, oh my God, I saw you on Growing Pains, or what was that kind of?
I remember at the time, since it was football season, and I remember my sister Leanna started dating Kirk. And so then there was a rumor that she was going to take him to homecoming dance. And so of course everybody was like, so our whole entire school, we were identical triplets. So people already knew who we were. Like we were kind of a novelty and, we were kind of involved in everything, and so, and we were just, so I think people knew us. And then it was kind of like this rumor mill about like Growing Pains and Kirk Cameron. I mean, it'd be like the biggest, how there was fewer stars back then.
Yeah.
Back then there was like 3 networks and out of, maybe just a couple TV stars. It'd be like the Justin Bieber. That's how much everyone loved with Kirk Cameron. That's how big his influence was. It'd be like if Justin Bieber was maybe going to come to your homecoming dance. So, and we were just as wowed as that. I remember he did take Leanna and he borrowed Alan Thicke's Porsche to take her.
Oh my God. Yeah. So he did come to the homecoming. Yeah,
he did.
Wow.
He did. I know.
It becomes almost like an episode of Growing Pains in a way.
Very meta, right?
Yeah.
And it was so weird because he's playing a real kid on TV, but he's not really one, because he's on TV. And we're like just kind of interlopers going from the pretend set of the TV with the pretend teacher.
Right, because he's also Mike Seaver. He's not on the show. He's not, Kirk Cameron and Mike Seaver are probably 2 different people, I would imagine.
Yes.
Maybe similar in some ways, why it works, but he's not, you're not bringing Mike Seaver to homecoming. You're bringing the actor that plays him, and it just happens to be huge.
And that's that was when I was learning that Mike Seaver was like this more boisterous, silly, fun-loving. You could play pranks. And I think Kirk was like, had to be far more mature and more serious and much more intellectual and much.
Sure.
I remember that was surprising to me. I'm like, oh, and just watching, how you step into character. And I think that's what everybody thinks. They think you are your character, And if
Right.
you do a great job, that's the best, you know.
Oh, of course. I mean, I always assumed Mike or Kirk Cameron was that goofy kid because he did such a great, all of you all did such a great job. And that's what made some of that work so great. Because listen, there's shows from that era that did not have the mass success as a Growing Pains, right? And I think it all kind of plays out the way it's supposed to. You know, there are just some people that are so talented that they command a room or a space and they can deliver exactly what's needed of them.
And their parent, the mom and the dad were like, I was like, gosh, they were kind of, you know, everybody wanted their dad to be like a therapist who knew the right thing to say. Like he was kind of an idealist. And the mom Joanna was just so like warm and sweet, you know, it was like the ideal. We wanted that family, you know, we wanted to have that perfect family.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of my career was based on like idealism, like the idealism of having a twin or a triplet.
Sure.
You know, you know, there's a lot of that, you know, and now it seems like the trend in TV is let's, you know, show a more variety. I think there's still an aspirational, but now it's not so much like doing it all, you know, perfect, like one way perfect. Now it's a lot of different.
Yeah, I agree. So then after that, like I say that you did My Two Dads, but Parent Trap, is that what becomes the big, like a big,
that was like our big,
ship, you know, like that takes it to the Growing Pains, and then that takes it to a whole other exactly. level where you are the Kirk Cameron now. Do you know what I mean? Like you are this. Yep.
And thankfully I had a couple guest stars under my belt of like what to do on a set, because there's so many, it's like a different language, and, you know, and you're a kid and you don't really know, like, and then it's funny, then I got to then you know, be the kid and learning like, what does this mean? And, oh, I'm supposed to, why are they, you know, just it's like a different country that you're visiting. Like there's different rules there. There's different breaks, and there's different, you know, as the actor, you don't go and change your hair or makeup. There's somebody that does that for you. There's somebody that does your clothes. You learn where everybody's job is. It's somebody's job to do the lighting. So it's your job. You have to stay there and stand on your mark while they're, you know what I mean? And for everybody, you learn where everybody's doing their job and how to allow everybody to do their job. And it's funny that I got to then experience it when I did the Kicks 4 years ago, and having all the kids were new to TV and new on shows. And I was then helping them, like helping Six. I go, it was just like reminding me so much of when I was a kid, like, you know. But
now you're on the other end of the story. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And it was a thrill. And I was like, I'm so happy for it. It's such a soft landing into the business. Like, who gets that? Who gets given a TV show and gets to, and the Six Orange, who played my daughter in the Kicks, and the triplets. Like we were so fortunate, because learning on the job is the best way. And then before you have any preconceived notions of anything. And it was just,
yeah. So you're coming into these roles as a guest star, and you have to learn the different, I don't want to say politics, but you have to learn the family or the setting of the different groups, right? Because Growing Pains is one thing, but then going into a Baywatch or a 90210 must be some, and I know there's a lot of years that pass, but I know that there's got to be some sort of difference. You're older, and there's a lot more, I mean, it's particularly on 90210, I know there's a lot more drama happening behind the scenes and whatnot. And is that how do you adapt, I guess, is where I'm going with this to. Well,
you learn basically, like when it's your own show, and I've been on my own show, I've guest starred, and then I've been on my own show, and then I've guest starred. So it's peaks and valleys. So sometimes I got my own parking spot right next to my trailer, and other times nobody knows who I am, and they think I'm background. You know what I mean? So that's just kind of par for the course, and that is a career, and that's how it goes. But I think one of the first things they have a new director. Mostly shows they might have a handful, like 6 directors, but they each come on just for 1 week, and then they go off and edit it, and the new person comes. So on really successful shows, the power dynamic is really in with the stars, the leads of the show. But as the guest, you have to kind of come in and realize who's telling you what, you know. And like I did, what's that one? The one about Hawaii Five-0.
Mm-hmm.
That one, I noticed that the male leads had a lot of power. They basically almost like a director telling me things that I've never been, usually only a director tells me. And so you kind of have to walk that line of like, do I listen to him? He's telling me to literally a line change or a character, like a physical change. I'm like, oh, do I, and you kind of learn that. And then there's dynamics going on with the other actors. And so, it's hard. You have to hold on to yourself. You step on there, you have to go, I got hired for my thing. I'm not the star, but I'm a critical part of my role, and I'm going to come on and do it, hold my head high. It might be a week, and then I'm bounced out, so but even spending one day on a set, you get close. So there's a closeness that after like 5 years on a show, these people are so tight, and it's, you kind of come in, you just have to kind of know where you just kind of find where it is. And usually they're very nice, like Seinfeld, they were used to a new girl of the week kind of situation. That was also at the pinnacle of the show.
Totally.
Of course, when I booked it, I had never seen an episode of it.
No.
We watched it. And then that now I've seen all of them. But like that show, they were used to it. And they have a special routine, and they were extremely gracious. Like I would say Seinfeld is like the top, like where they were extremely nice, the actors, even the ones I'm not in a scene with would come around and say, hey, welcome to the show. Especially Jason Alexander. I don't think I
don't think you had scenes with Jason. You had,
no, I didn't. And
you had scenes with Mickey and Kramer, Michael Richards. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I hung out with them. And then in the church at the end, we did a pre-tape.
Yeah.
Like at the wedding, and I go running out of the church crying. So it was nice that those other actors kind of came around, like Jason Alexander specifically. He came to the green room before the taping and said, welcome, good luck, good to have you. I'm Jason. Like that means so much. It means so much. It's
I'm curious about that show because it's interesting because it's later on. I mean, it's after some of the the high schools kind of stuff, right? And it is such a huge show. I don't know if Larry David is he still there? Mm-hmm. So Larry David's there. I mean, and that set is obviously probably the most of the iconic ones that you worked on with Jerry's apartment and all that stuff. So is it still, do you like going into the growing pains, what we were talking about, and being like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm on this set. Do you still get that? I know you haven't seen a Seinfeld, but you're aware of how huge the show is.
I was aware. As soon as I booked it, people were saying it. I'm like, oh. And you walk on and you realize, oh my gosh, of course I know who Jerry Seinfeld is. Of course I know who he is. And there's something about going on a set. It's just physical. It's bright and sunny outside. You open a giant door that's this thick and you shut it behind you, and it's dark and lights are over it's like a different world when you step in there. It's just different. It's rarefied. And then the lights, it's like you're in a cave, and it was the best part of that show. My favorite day was the pre-tape of the church, because I got to see all the main cast members, all just hanging out, and they almost stayed in character and were riffing, and I loved it. It made me realize you have to stay playful, and they were on their feet mentally, you know what I mean, like so that when they step back into their character, and they were doing it because it was fun, but also when they were staying loose. And I just thought it was genius how they were just had this witty repartee. They didn't like stop and eat Slurpees and just take a load. They, you know what I mean? They stayed sharp and ready.
Stayed in it. Yeah.
Stayed in it. And it was amazing to see them all joking and laughing, and how fast. It's almost like a family, almost the way my sisters and I are. When we talk, we kind of almost skip a beat, skip sentences, because we know what each other's talking about. That's how that main Seinfeld cast was. And they were just laughing and all the inside jokes and it was just kind of funny to watch from the outside.
What about doing the scenes with Michael Richards and the actor that played Mickey? And that must have been some really great stuff, because there's so much hilariousness between all of you there. What was it like to work with Michael? I mean, I think he's a comedic genius. You know what I mean? He
is, and it's funny. They almost immediately, I think he said, "Oh, this is going to be an iconic episode." And I'm like, "How do you know? We haven't even shot it yet. How do you know?" He goes, "It's Jerry's favorite." And somehow they were right. They knew. And that's why so during that week when I got cast, and you're there a week, they added stunt casting, which, so after we were on, that was when they added in Mickey's parents, which is
right. Yeah.
He's a famous actor. I'm blanking on his name. They added those famous people, and they just added all these people. They knew and so they know it's going to be iconic. The good and the bad. I knew my original audition was really big. So I was like, I had tons of lines. I was like, yes, this is going to be huge.
Amazing.
And then I get there, and after we do the run through, and Michael goes, don't get too attached to those lines, because when we come back, it's going to be totally different. I'm like, how do you know? Well, he knew.
Yeah.
He knew. Because I was, they deserve to get the punchlines. It's hard to give the punchlines away. So I wish
guest star.
The original script, and that one, it'd be fun to see how they changed it. But it was amazing. It was great the way it just kind of came out. And it's a very Michael tries things out, and he laughs along with it. And so everybody's having a good time. That's what I've learned, is you can't just stop and just perform. You have to be enjoying it, engaged and laughing. And I remember one of the first days I was on the set, and it was before I knew who, oh my God, what's his name? He writes all the Seinfelds that you asked me. If he was
Larry David?
Larry David.
Yeah.
I didn't know who Larry David was. Sorry, Larry David.
I don't think a lot of us did until he did Curb Your Enthusiasm. And then we really got an understanding of who this guy is. Yeah, right.
I had no idea who he was, but he came up when I was getting a snack at craft service, and he's like, you're really good. You're really funny. We loved your audition. And I was like, oh, thank you. And now I realize, of course, that's Larry David. I remember his hair very specifically and his voice. And now I realize his voice was coming through that Seinfeld so much. I mean, you realize that's Larry David, just as it was almost like pre-Larry, but it was like so much of that. I had no idea, that's part of being green and not having a clue. You don't understand, they've been laughing at these lines for weeks. They had the storyline they thought was fun. They've been, you come in at the last hour and just to say the last little bit, but it's really been set in motion a long time. So it's their baby. And I didn't realize that actually probably until when I got on the kicks, and I realized, wow, they deserve to see it exactly the way they wrote it, on its feet with my all, before I would ever say, what about saying this? Or can I add this? Because they put in so much effort in the writer's room.
Sure.
And so now I see it as much more synergistic. I'm almost like, it's like we're all holding hands to do the scene. Do you know what I mean?
In Seinfeld, though, I mean, listen, the show is hilarious. I'm sure the actors you were working with, and the scene that you're in is very funny, with the two actors and with Michael. You can't break the scene because you're a guest star, but Michael could.
Oh, yeah. And he did.
Right.
And he did. And he also changed, for instance, we were all sitting at that table, and he got up and made us all switch because it was his bad side.
Right.
And he wanted a certain side to camera. But guess what? He knows. He knew. He's on a show like that, the actor can stand up and say, I want to reset, and do that. And he can,
And he did.
He specifically picked the shirt. I remember that. I remember, those crazy shirts when he's like, well, I'm wearing it. And they're wearing that funny shirt. They brought it to him, and he got to pick which one, and he did it. It wasn't like if it was week one on a new show, there'd be the director, the producers, everybody would be in there,
Right. But so you had done, you prior to Seinfeld, you did the 90210, which we talked about on another podcast. But in case someone has not heard about that other podcast, I mean, you and your sister have a pretty big part where you guys go out with Steve and Brandon, Ian, and Jason, and that becomes fairly an iconic thing in 90210. So you have a series of these iconic parts, iconic storylines, right? And is it tough to be well, not I don't know, the 90210 was so big, but then you do Seinfeld, and is it constantly feeling I don't know where people know me from? Do you know what I mean?
That's true. People all the time go, how do I know you? And I'm like, because there has been, because everybody our age, back then, we all were watching the same things. And,
sure.
So and I know my fans are 30 something moms from parent, and they know me from Parent Trap. And then if it's guys, men, I go, they've probably been watching sports where my commercials play, I used to do a lot of beer ads, or now I do AutoNation.
I think I knew that. Now that you said that, I just remember you in an ad like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And all of my ads, it's funny. I think it's just who I am, or maybe it's my appeal or something. They all end up being played on the, in the mornings or during sports, like beer, like I think I'm the aspirational, the girl that like, you can get her, the
Like girl
wife,
next door. Yeah.
my wife, only
Yeah.
cleaned up,
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's funny. I always do, like, I never do Mercedes Benz. I always do Honda. I've done, I do the vacuum cleaner commercials or I'm not the glamour girl, which I'm happy about.
Right.
And I do like
Right.
AutoNation. It's a bunch of car stuff, so
Mhm.
I'm super fortunate to have that job.
So going back to the 90210, I want to ask you because it's a different time period of your life because it's a high school. Were you older or than the characters that you were on? Because that was a common thing with 90210 where the actors were actually like
Yes, and often they have to cast. They're mindful of the main cast, and so they were probably casting us to look. They wouldn't have put real, 16-year-olds next to them because they were all 18.
That's awkward, right? Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
so that's how that lucked out. I was in college. I was at UCLA with Leanna. We were both at UCLA. I was Pi Phi, she was DG, and so we were, I guess, in 19 playing probably 16, 17.
Yeah. And
yeah.
you told me that you both were watching 90210 a bunch. So when you got that, it was like, my God, we're on this show.
Number one show again. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, think about it. Back then there was no cable. I mean, I don't even know if there was cable. So everything was only on those 3 networks. And it was just the hottest show. Like, of course we watched it. I remember thinking, oh my gosh, like, and I had crush on Jason Priestley, of course. And I got to kiss him, like how, like, I mean, iconic, like how it was just, again, it was weird because we would see people and I think I don't know, when you're a girl and their girl fans are a little more, I don't know, people were just, it wasn't as bad. I think I don't know. I have no idea when people, I'm always shocked when people recognize me. I'm like, you recognize me? I just like everybody. I forget that my face is kind of out there a lot.
Yeah, I would recognize
kind of been, kind of constant little dribble, the whole time.
Well, on that note, though, I mean, in terms of being a guest star, that is sort of the a thing, right? Like, I know you from somewhere, but what do I know you from? And then you realize, like, oh, I know you from several things.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not just the one thing. And so I guess my question is, how do you sort of, as an actor, I mean, it's hard because you're coming in for a week and you have a character. How do you develop and find the character in such? I mean, like you said, you've done shows where you were the lead and you were the star, not the guest star, the star of the show. So you have some time to develop who this person's going to be. You can create some backstory, but you have a week to find Julie in these scenes. And so, what is that process like for you?
It's basically, how like. I used to say, like, to book a commercial, you have 3 seconds to book it. You know what I mean? And you have to do the whole thing. You don't have like a preamble and you don't get to ramp up. You have to be because they're going to use a second. So you have to be fully in your character right away. There's no chance. There's no like building up. So I think that's how a sitcom is. So I would say it's like or a 1 hour is a little bit more, but a sitcom is really small. And so you start with the general, like, on Seinfeld, obviously, I just started with an idea. I started with one of my characters, like a character, a go-to character, and try to just find the general comedy in it. Like when you're first working on it before you even audition, you're like, where is the comedy here? And so then you just kind of start there, and hopefully you can kind of keep turning it into something more and more specific as it goes on. But you don't have time to, you have to find the musicality, you have to find the reversals and where the writer intended there to be a joke. So you don't have the luxury of like, well, I think my character would, no, you, from the moment you read it, you have to read it in that. And hopefully you start with that, because you do a read through and everybody's at a table and you're reading it with everybody. You have to hit all your beats, that the writer intended. And then, you just kind of, it's kind of tricky. You just kind of like throw it out there and do it. I'm trying to think of one that was harder. I remember like another, I mean, it's weird. It's almost like you've already done a polished job when you get a guest star, because you don't have a lot of, when you step on there, they kind of want what they cast you on. Do you know what I mean? They've seen you do all the big scenes already. They already have it on tape. They've already approved it. So it's not like you have a chance to come and say, I want to try it with a Southern accent,
Right. Nobody wants that.
Nobody wants it. They kind of want what you did. And really it's just about like going, okay, it's kind of like broad strokes. You're like, okay, I've got to hit these beats. They want a girl crying. They want a girl, like when I did Baywatch, that's another iconic one.
Exactly.
That one was one where, okay, I had to cry. They were going to, so I remember when I came in to audition, the cast director, as I'm in the middle, I'm working up to my cry. It's in the middle of the scene. And she takes a call and is talking and she goes, and I was like, I'm crying. But I did, because you just have to. Like, it wasn't like a choice. I'm like, maybe don't want to. Like, you have to.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that times to be challenging to come in there and just have to. You don't have time to sort of like. You have to just turn on whatever's being asked of you in the moment.
Exactly. A lot of it's instinct, because you read it, you go, you've got instinct, but you also know the tone of the show. The better you know a show, the better you can slip into that. So because each show has different tone, right? Like sometimes, like this David E. Kelly show, you talk really fast, and there's just different tones, and a lot of it's just luck. Like I might come in and I might be in a silly mood, and so I read mine in kind of a silly offbeat way, and another girl might read it real serious. They're both right. It's just, and then which you don't really change too much from that performance.
I do find that they sometimes give guest stars meatier parts in terms of like a drama. They're not going to kill off the main actor, so they give the illness to the guest star or the murder, whatever the big thing is. Obviously the main characters are going to react to that. I don't know if you've had that experience in anything that you've done where you've gotten this meatier part because
that's an interesting. I remember when I did Party of Five, it was I was playing Bailey's girlfriend, but it was clear they wanted to write. I was in service of the script because I think they were hiring Love Hewitt to come. And so I was supposed to be the perfect girl that he passes on and is really sad. And then he finds the girl that he's supposed to be with. And so like, I was supposed to be crying. It was intended to be like, let's see Bailey, how awkward it is. Like you can see the writers going, well, how can we put our characters in hot water? Let's make him break up with a perfect girl. Let's make him, and so they just try to run these poor characters through a gauntlet. And then we're kind of in service to that. So we're always in service to the main characters first and foremost. So if we're being interviewed, like, by a detective, we're there. It's not just us. We're there to kind of highlight the main character, to be honest. Like in Seinfeld, we were there. They sacrificed a bunch of lines and a bunch of our story in service so that they would get bigger laughs overall for our main characters, who it's easier to laugh because and love them.
Yeah. So I mean, it makes total sense, but it is a challenge. I mean, I don't know if it's a challenge, but it's an interesting play as an actor, and you talked before about Jason Alexander saying hello to everybody. And I don't know what it was like on 90210. I mean, we've talked about that, but like, I'm sure the guys are really great. And sometimes the girls I've heard could be a little bit challenging, maybe. But
that's across the board. And I'm a woman. Across the board. Men are usually nicer or more seemingly more generous. I don't know why. It could be that maybe it's that show. There was a lot of animosity going on right at that moment, a lot of drama. So it's probably a good thing that I didn't have to tangle too much with the girls.
But like, I'm curious though, when you come into something like that, right? I mean, we've talked about Growing Pains. You guys knew everybody, your families were connected to the Camerons and all this. And then you come into a 90210 where they go for overnight from being like, maybe the show will be canceled to a hugely iconic show, and there's personal conflict and all the rumors. And I'm sure you're aware of some of that when you walk to set. So does it make it more challenging or intimidating?
Yes, 100%. You can cut it with a knife. You note at the moment, because when you show up on your tape day and you step into the trailer, that's when you get your makeup done, and everybody uses it's one general area, and there's different. So you're sitting next to all the characters. And whatever energy is there, and if they're hating each other or arguing or stressed or nervous or whatever. And so that's another thing, you learn to kind of stay in your lane. But yeah, I remember being very nervous about that. and you can just feel it. You don't even know what's going on. You get into the transpo van, they're taking you to set, and you're like, God, I hope they don't start, whatever it is. You don't even know what's going on, but you can sit in the car and know that, oh, something's big, and I'm just going to stay here and not get nervous.
I hope it has nothing to do with me.
I hope it has nothing to do with me. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's insecure. Like, I remember when I did Seinfeld, I was like, I remember that I was just sure. I'm like, maybe, what if I get written off? What if they can't? And it's just anxiety. It's just nervousness. You're like, what if I say my line so bad at the table read that I get fired? And pretty much every job, I think that I'm going to get fired crosses my mind at some point before.
Has it happened?
No.
Oh,
no.
So why do you put that in
but
your
it
head?
has happened to people I know.
Right. Sure. For sure. Yeah.
And so, you learn things. Like, I remember somebody wasn't on the kicks, like we did our first table read, and one of the kids was just kind of dialing it in. I don't think she realized. I go, oh no. So I was like, you give 110% as if you were on its feet filming during the table read. That's the way it goes. You would hate for someone to get fired for that, but
and I'm sure you've seen it. Yeah.
I've seen it. I have seen it. And sometimes, and I go, oh gosh, I bet they could have given more. Not on my show, the kicks or anything, but I've heard friends on other shows have been fired for the way they looked, or the way they came across, or the way they, it
happens.
It's happening now with politics. People are getting fired based on their politics. And it's just a scary situation. So you just go, stay in your lane. Nobody wants to hear from me about my politics. Nobody, I'll just do it.
Yeah, no, I get that. But I was going to ask you, when you have a starring role after doing all the guest starring stuff, and you said Jason was kind to you, or Luke Perry maybe was kind to you, do you come with the approach of like, well, I have been a guest star, I know what the guest star is feeling here, yes, let me go say hello? Or is it like, do you get into your head about what you're doing as a lead that you're like, oh, I totally forgot to say hi to the guest star? Or how do you like,
hopefully it's not that. Right. I mean, the truth is, because I've had ups and downs. I've been the lead and then not, and the lead again and then not. I understand that some days my job is to show up and help the lead, for 1 week or 2 weeks and help them shine. And other times it'll be my job. I mean, when I was doing the kicks, I had friends that were booked, as guest stars, and they could be on their own show tomorrow and be big stars. You know what I mean? But on the show today, they've got 2 lines, and I'm the star, so I guess I have that long view now because of experience. Like, oh, I'm no better, no worse. I'm lucky, and I'm hopefully going to be in it. I want to have a few more of those, leads, guests, leads. It's always fun to meet people and meet a whole new group of people. Every time I don't think I've ever not been on a set and not made an interesting connection, a good, I find that 90% of the people are so awesome and so creative and clever and interesting and just worthy of a show, So I remember this little girl, Julia Butters, was on the kicks, played this couple little lines. She was hilarious, but then she was in the Oscar-winning movie, I think last year. I'm like, holy cow. I mean, it's one day it's kind of the way it is. It's why hopefully you don't burn too many bridges,
Right.
People have a choice of who they work with. They're going to work with somebody that they enjoy and is a team player. It is the most team of anything, and there's always going to be people who, pull their rank because they can.
Sure. I mean, and is that difficult when you watch something like that and see that play out?
Yeah. Cause I mean, especially when it's young people, cause I go, oh gosh. You don't know.
Do you see a difference with young, and I don't mean to be like this this generation, but I'm sure they probably said it when we were younger kids, but I mean, do you see what is the difference that you see, I guess, from when you were on Growing Pains to young actors now coming to set? Is it a social media thing where? Yes.
Well, now I feel like they're so aware. They're so self-aware. We were not self-aware. We were like actors all by ourselves. We'd come in. So we were kind of wide-eyed. We didn't know. And I think a lot of kids were until they got to set. And then their whole world was that set, or their Hollywood world, where now these kids are so aware of, just the whole world is watching. They have, PR teams and people and their families, and and they're creating their own content. Everybody's doing 5 other projects. That's another big thing. We were just like on the show, like that was our one job. Versus now there's a lot of different revenue streams. They're trying to post, they're keeping their image up. We didn't have an image. We did, but we didn't.
Yeah, or their brand, right? Like they're thinking about their brand. I mean, they're
about their brand. So for instance, my nephew, my sister Joy, who I don't think you met, her son is 19 and he's on his first show as an actor. And he's shooting in Connecticut. And I'm watching going, wow, it's so similar to us. He's, in college basically and doing his first show. I'm like, that's exactly what his mom did. But he has a different mentality. He loves acting and doing all that, but he can do so much more on his own, networking, because you have this phone and you have ability to film, and he's got an awareness of PR and all, the kids are much more involved firsthand in their own show. So it's more stress.
It seems more stress. And it, like you talking to what you were talking about before, it seems like people get removed for a political thought, or maybe even for young kids, something that they post that is deemed inappropriate or whatever. So I think like, I don't know, Brian has said to me, I don't know in person or on one of these shows, but he doesn't know how you all would do if social media existed back in the day. You know what I mean?
I can't even fathom it. I can't even fathom, because I think I would never even made it to acting. I think I would have been sidetracked on it can be so time consuming, social media, and so critical. I don't think I would have I think I would have been crippled with like, oh, I'm not good enough, or I'm not, I think I would have stopped. Instead, I think everybody, like if they want to go into film, acting, TV, whatever, any art, you kind of want to be off the stage and be just making stuff and working it out and playing and having fun. You need that momentum to get going. Otherwise you might never make it. Now these kids that get hired, it's based on their following. It's based on the fact they have a following, not on their acting skills.
Yeah.
It's because, and so it's just a different value system. And I think the kids today think it's more about looks. And we thought, of course, it's about our acting and
ability, right? Mm-hmm.
Ability. And I think there's probably a happy medium in there. It was for sure our looks as well as but we were trying to get our acting chops down, versus just getting a video to go viral.
Yeah, there was something about trying to get recognized for the talent and going further in the career so that you could get yourself in a film or something else and down the line. Was it difficult in some of the shows? I guess you didn't really have the problem because you kept guest starring and doing other things, but we always hear about the typecasting and all that stuff. Did you ever find that to be challenging for you?
I got worried because we always did the twin triplet stuff. And I was like, I wanted to be known as my own. So then that's why I started auditioning on single stuff, because it used to be all twin and triplet stuff. And it was fun. I mean, it was, and we got to the point where we can almost feel what they want from us. Do you know what I mean? When it's the 3 of us, there's like a da-da-da.
Sure.
Joke, and it's this fantasy. They want the fantasy like triplets who love Jewish men, or
right. Yeah.
And so we could kind of, again, it's just kind of instinctual at some point, but our goal was to kind of, we saw the whole career. Like for me, I was like, you want to do guest stars better and better so that somebody will see you, so that they bring you in and then you get on a network list and then you can be on a show that goes, the goal was to get on a show that went into syndication. So you need a show for 4 years or more, 3.5 years or whatever. Now, I don't even know what the goal is, and I mean, I guess the goal for me is I just want to work regularly, because it used to be you wanted the syndicated show. That was just the gold standard. And it's funny. It's supposed to be the golden age of TV, but there's almost so much TV I can't even keep up.
And there's so many streaming platforms and so many places to watch TV and so many different shows and whatnot.
And shows have smaller audiences because it's just so fractured. And it used to be like the amount of eyeballs that were on like Parent Trap, that is unheard of. That amount of viewership. It doesn't happen today. That was so big because it was only, everybody was watching. Now it's so fractured. They're getting smaller and smaller. I know I can't keep up with all the TV I want to watch. And I love TV. TV's always been my favorite medium. Like I've done movies, but I just love TV. I will always love TV. I will always laugh at the dumb family comedies. I loved Charlie. I thought I would laugh. I love that. I loved Hannah Montana. I like TV, and I like 1 hours, and I like, I like the stories they are able to tell, lots of different stories, and there's some great acting in it. Great.
I want to ask you lastly, this industry or the entertainment industry or acting is tough. It is, you have to have a lot of patience and tolerance and deal with rejection. I don't know, what has that process been like for you? How do you process some of that? And I guess just advice that you'd give to other young actors or whomever, whatever field people are trying to get into that has such a, high pain threshold, I guess.
It is have high pain. That's pretty funny. It's very true. I think the truth is you have to be in it for the long haul. It's not like if, obviously if you want to do it to be famous, it's not a very effective way to do it. I think you have to really love it and surround yourself with good people. Know that it's not a hurry. You're not racing to the end. I mean, look, I never would have thought when I did 90210 that I would still be acting 30 years later. Like, who would have guessed, that just, but it's been, definitely I've had my ups and downs, and it's tough, but it's all relationships based. So I make a new relationship with a new manager, and then they take me to a certain level, and then I might make a relationship with a new agent, and that might take me. I think the best thing is to continually work on your craft, not take any relationship or job for granted. I mean, really, and you never know when where your next job is coming from. Sometimes it's somebody that I did a commercial with, that now the people, like other actors I know, are now directing and writing. One of my Taylor Sheridan, who is the creator of Yellowstone, he was my acting coach because just another actor, out of work actor. And so I would go to him and he would help me with all and I was always booking. He could not book a job to save his life, but he was writing a script. So I think I had a good community around me of good people, like Taylor just gets it. And I think it's never easy to be rejected. It's I guess for me, it was hard when I got rejected because I thought, well, like when like Leanna and I both were up for Karate Kid 2 or 3, and it got down to 3 people, and then Leanna booked it. I didn't. And I was like, oh, so it was hard not to take it personally, because it's not like they went with a different look because we have the same look.
Right.
I was like, nope, they went with who they liked better as an actor. I'm like, oh gosh. So it's hard for sure. Those are the most painful ones.
That must have been a very tough experience for you.
That was terrible. And then Leanna had to lose it because Parent Trap, the Hawaiian episode, they pushed our dates, and so we had to go to Hawaii to shoot. So Leanna couldn't do it, so Robin Lively did it, and I'm still friends with Robin Lively to this day. But I think the rejection piece, it's hard because yes, they are rejecting you. The best part is that you have to just go, I'm doing it for me. And so what I do now, I audition, I put myself on tape, I do the best I can. It's hard not to, after 3 or 4 hours of work, just to forget it. You just take it and you put it aside, and I go, am I happy did I put my stamp on that? Yes, I did. I did it the way I wanted to do it. And it's the long run. I'm looking in the long run. Each audition is making me better. It's getting me to and I'm, and there's always something to learn. It's like a circle. You're not, you're always coming back to the beginning, like meditation, and start again, go back to the breath. I mean, I've been on, interviewed by Johnny Carson, and I've been on the Hollywood, Christmas parade on my own float. And I've been, guest starring, and you know what I mean? Like there's just a rhythm to it. And I think it's good to just know that you're in it for the long haul. And if you can make your own moves, like do what you can. If you're a writer, write. If you have a funny character, put it on tape. If you know people, network, stay in class, stay with, and I'm telling myself this too. I'm in a class that's with artists and on every Sunday on Zoom during the pandemic. And it was the best thing I could have done because it kept me sharp, engaged, creating, excited. I actually fell back in love with acting.
That's amazing.
This year. I don't even know if I ever really was in love with it the way I am with it now. And I'm so glad that that's from showing up when I didn't want to. And we write for each other, and we just tackle things that because if you're not getting the scripts that are stretching you,
you need to find them.
You have to find them and make it. Otherwise, you're gonna like, a lot of the characters are often the same. Wife in distress, husband dies. A lot of the, especially guest stars, they're very generally in the same. So you try to bring a little more juice to them if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been great, Monica. I feel like I can talk to you for another 4 weeks, but you've got someone there and all that. But thank you for your time here, and good catching up.
Thank you. Well, have me back, please.
Yes, will do. All right.
I'll go book another guest star and then I'll come back.
Please do. All right. That was Monica Lacy. Amazing stuff coming out of there. Next week, we're in for a real treat. Much love to my friend Kathleen Robertson, who hooked me up with a very cool interview. We'll be talking to Jamie Lynn Siegler, Meadow Soprano from The Sopranos, and she did Entourage. So much stuff. It's going to be super awesome to spend some time talking about her guest star stuff and, of course, her role as Meadow. That's next week, December 15th, right here on Guest Star. So until then, I will see you next week.